So today on Z33 Garage, we will be changing our rear brakes, and I'm probably going to be installing these guys. I'm 90% sure that my old bearings are bad, so these will be going to be replacing. I have a couple tools that you will probably need. Obviously brakes, bearings, some disc brake quiet, or any type of whatever fluid you want to use to quiet the brakes. You're gonna need, I bought these at Harbor Freight. So you have two things. You have your bearing separator, which is this baby right here, which you can build it, or I bought it because fuck it, right? I also got these guys, which are basically bearing pushers, which I'm gonna use as a backing plate for the bearings. There's also one more that I need to get from there. You're gonna need a couple other tools. Obviously, my friend Joey lent me the torque gun, so this is gonna help me a lot since I don't have one. Obviously, you're gonna need wrenches and spanners and all that stuff, which I don't have them all here. You're probably gonna need a double hammer or something like that, some wood chucks, and obviously this, which is the manual. This is the rack 6 page. It goes from 6, 8, 9, 10, 11. Yeah, that's pretty much it. The reason why I got 11 was because if any case I have to look at the axle, the rear axle, I have a diagram here showing me how to do that. Same thing here goes with the torque specs for all the bolts. As you can see, those are the ones that connect the diff to the axle. There's some how-tos on how to separate the bearings, which I already know how to do. See, you need that tool, which is right there, because otherwise what will happen is that the collar of the bearing, when you pull it out, let's say you use just a regular bearing puller and you don't actually have anything to support the bearing from underneath, you'll break the bearing in half. Obviously, if yours is bad, it doesn't matter, but the problem with that is that now you have to knock out that piece of bearing that's stuck on the hub, which the hub you really don't want to damage, because any damage on the hub, basically if you damage the hub, any slight damage will start wiggling. And as you see, I'm only wiggling slightly, but look at the angle that it's wiggling, right? So imagine that translated to your tire, or your brakes, or your calipers, etc., etc. And here are the torque specs for the bolts that I'm gonna have to remove. And there's that hub right there. I bought these hubs, the Timkins, off Amazon, which were 54 bucks shipped, which was awesome because all my local stores were charging an arm and a leg for them. So yeah, check Amazon out, it'll probably help you out. So yeah. You might need, obviously, WD-40, some grease for the axle once you remove it, which I don't have here, but the, oh, there we go, the PV Blaster. This stuff is awesome. Or whatever liquid you have in your area. This is what we have here. These are all my other spanners and wrenches and stuff, and sockets that I have down there. And I'm going to try using two things. I'm going to try using my press, which I modified a little bit. My Harbor Freight press, that way I put this bar on the bottom, which I bolted. Normally this bar sits here and you can move it. I bolted it down there to give me some extra clearance for the hub. I don't know if this will work, but I'm gonna have to try because this is the only press I have. So yeah, we'll see how this goes. If not, I think there may be another way to pull it in. So yeah, these are the other ones that I'm gonna need, which these things are impossible to open. I'm probably gonna need this guy right here because the bearing's about this big. So they come with all these. They're all different sizes and they're all color coded, which is nice, I guess, if you remember the size compared to the color. But yeah, first things first, we gotta get the car lifted. So I'm gonna do the brakes first because I gotta do a brake inspection anyway. But we're gonna lift up the car and remove the wheel, and I have spacers on, which I'm gonna turn on my, they're right there. So I'm gonna take those guys off and check my rear brakes, because these haven't been changed since I bought the car almost 3 years ago. So that's probably something that I have to take care of. So outside of that, oh yeah, use jack stands please, because we will be under the car. So use jack stands. Okay. I got my jack there with all my stuff, and yeah. So I'm gonna go ahead and jack up the car, and we'll start from there. Basically, lift the car up using the pumpkin as a lift point, or that's how I did in my case. Put the jack in that pinch weld right there, and one on the other side. So, and I personally like doing the push test, make sure it doesn't move. So I'm gonna leave the jack down there on right now, since I'm not gonna be under the car. So let's take off the wheels. I already loosened them up while they're on the floor. It's easier that way. So we'll get to that. The tire off. You're gonna have to remove the brake caliper, which is removed by these two bolts, one on this side. This sits like that, right? That's a brake pad. One sits like that, one on the bottom. So those are, I believe, 19mm bolts. I'm gonna leave right there because that one messed up, but one goes right here and the other one goes here on the bottom. You will have to use a breaker bar to do it. I found out that the best way to do it is to put the socket here and then the breaker bar through these two arms, and then break it this way. And the same thing goes with this one, because if you do it up here, like if you put the bar up here aiming this way, you're probably going to hit your knuckle against this and you're not going to have a good day. So I'm speaking from experience, by the way. So take those calipers off and take the pin out of here. You're going to have to replace this, so you will have to get a new one. And this, I believe, is a 32mm socket that's needed, which I don't have. Apparently I must have lent it to somebody or lost it or whatever, so I'm gonna have to go to the store right now and pick one up. So it's a good time to walk. I'm back. I got the 32mm socket, deep socket actually. So now I'm gonna use this bad boy to try to take this axle nut out. Damn, I have got to get me one of these. This thing just saved 5 years out of my back. Woo! Damn. Thank you, Joey. This thing's fucking awesome. Alright. Well, let's start taking that stuff off then. Oh, to the axle. Now it is removed. I think this is supposed to come right off. I'm gonna go get my hammer and take a couple whacks at it. See if I can take this bad boy off. This is where this stuff really comes in handy. It took me about 20 minutes to kick out. It took me 5 minutes with this. Spray it basically, and like when you have the rotor in, make sure your e-brake is off first. Derp. Yeah, that's a fairly common issue with this, is that everybody just puts the e-brake on and forgets to take it off, so this becomes impossible to remove. Then put PB Blast on these bolts from the outside of the rotor and in here, just for later, because this is going to have to be removed, at least the axle wise. So do that, spray it, give it about 10 minutes, and then start hitting it with a hammer. So basically, like if this is my hammer, I come behind here and hit it this way, rotate it, hit it, rotate it, hit it, rotate, hit, and do that. If it becomes, now what happened is that the rotor will little by little do this as you're hitting it. You take a flathead screwdriver and you put it in here, in those things, and you can use that as leverage to move the rotor out of the way. And as you see on this side, I've already gone ahead and removed it. So by mistake I knocked one of the bolts out, which should be right there. So I'm gonna take it out and install it, because obviously I need that bolt already. So let's get to it. So after you get the the brakes and calipers and all that shit removed, you need to loosen the 6 axle bolts on each side. Now mine I already loosened because they're about, I think 70 or 79 foot-pounds. I gotta double check, but yeah, they're pretty tight. And if you haven't watched my my diff video, basically what you do, you take a 14 millimeter and you put it so it rests against this on the back end of the bolt, and then with this one you put it on here and you use that to turn, because this axle will move. So instead of having to go out, press the e-brake, turn it, go out, press the e-brake, remove the e-brake, and do that shit like 6 or 7 times, like 12 times, because there's 6 on each side. Just do that and that'll save you a ton of time and a ton of back problems. That way you only have to get under the car once and not 12 times, or at least for this shit. Alright, after this I'm gonna go take a little break because I'm starving and I need rocket fuel. So I'm gonna go ahead and take a break, and I'll get back with this. After this, basically just remove this axle and remove the bolts, slide it down, and then slide it out. And that's about it. You're gonna have to remove the rear stabilizer bar linkage, and you don't have to remove the bar. Just lift it up like that. That way you have enough clearance here to push the axle out. Now you can see, or you can hear actually. It's not supposed to really sound like that. It's all gritty and it spins. So that's gonna get knocked out. So basically what you do, if I can try to film it, right behind here there's 4 bolts. I'm sure you can see them. Let me turn on the light. There's 4 bolts back here. So you're gonna have to remove those first, and then this basically gets out, like pushed out this way, pulled out, I mean. And that's it. You can see them right there, 1, 2, 3, 4. I'm gonna put some WD, some PB blaster on this, and be back in like 20 minutes so I can knock this guy out. After you loosen those 4 bolts using your breaker bar and the 17 millimeter over here, what you're gonna do, the easiest way to do it is that you go underneath the car and you put the breaker bar like this, and you do it from the bottom, like you ratchet it from the bottom. It's a lot easier and it'll save your hand from hitting this. All you have to do is break it, and then once you break it, you can use just a regular socket and then just ratchet. I'm sorry, I'm kind of tired. You use a regular ratchet to remove those 4 bolts in the back. Afterwards, which I'm going to show you, take a rubber mallet and you start tapping it, the bearing around. That way it knocks it out. By the way, use plenty of PB Blast on this guy. They're really tight on there, and they're probably rusted. If you see mine, look how dirty that shit is. So you're gonna have to use plenty of it. I put it and I just went home to relax a little bit for like 10 minutes while it did its thing, and I came back. These things came right out. All right, bolts are out. See them? So start tapping it like that. You see it starts to show up a little bit. See it from the bottom. Well, I can't do this with one hand, so I'm gonna have to stop recording, but basically you just do that so that way that little part around there shows up, and then that's it. You just pull it out. After an hour and a half dealing with this shit, sorry I couldn't film it, but I had my hands really tied up. So for those of you who are gonna buy this from Harbor Freight, don't. This fucking shit right here is a piece of crap. The threads already broke off. Now from here,
This bolt is actually surprisingly still holding up. This though is a piece of shit. The thread's already broke, so I had some grade 8 bolts over here, and which I used to press little by little the collar out. And even with this fucking retaining tool, the bearing still broke. So look at all that junk in there. So yeah, it's really dirty and grimy, and there's a bunch of crap in there, and I think the seal may have been broken at some point. But yeah, there's a lot of metal in there. And here's a collar. Chances are that this part will break on you, but you know what, that doesn't matter because I got it off. The whole point is that this collar right here stays intact. This is what you don't want to damage, or the teeth inside. Those hubs can go to hell for all I care. So Jesus, these bolts also weren't long enough, so I had to get 2 of these Home Depot bolts I had, which as you can see are completely and utterly bent, but I don't care because they were 40 cents a pop. So anyway, I'm gonna return this because I'm not gonna have a tool that's half-assed and half broken with this piece of junk. So yeah, this is getting returned, and I'm gonna look for something else, at least for now, but at least I got the job done with it. That's all I care. So anyway, more or less what you do is that once you have you have to put this little spacer thing here, that way it pushes down. Once you put this vise, basically you're gonna put this between the bearing like this on the bottom so it holds it, and then when you press it, this is gonna lift supposedly the whole bearing up. But in my case, maybe I used the wrong one, or maybe I should have bought the larger one, because the larger one supposedly it's sturdier, but it doesn't come with these, and I needed them. So in this case, I didn't give a shit. It'll clamp on this bearing on the bottom and pull it all up. But this was really rusty, and it could be a combination of both rust and I used the improper tool. But in this case, it doesn't matter. The spline wasn't damaged. The bearing's damaged, but the bearing is going in the garbage, so I don't give a shit. All right, after I'm going to clean up the bearing collar, add a little bit of grease, very little, not too much, and start pressing in the new bearing. New bearing is pushed in. Basically what I did was, this is the 6-ton press from Harbor Freight. So what I did was, normally the legs come here, and then there's another bar which is, I don't know, somewhere, but it broke. So basically what I did is I moved this bar that you're supposed to adjust from here to here, and I put it all the way down and I bolted it. That way it has more clearance. And then I basically used these 2 legs. Eventually I'm gonna put new bolts on the legs, and that way it's steady, but for now this will have to do. So afterwards I put the bushing on there, and with the sledgehammer I kind of pushed it in. It already has a lip on one side, so it goes up to there. Let me see if I can show you. That's the sit flush, so just watch it that way. Now look at the difference between this movement and the one in the other one. This is much more solid and everything. So I use the bigger 81 millimeter bearing pusher, which this I will keep, because these things are awesome. And it sits right there on the lip. Make sure you get one that sits all the way on the lip of the bearing, not like there, for example, because then you'll push the inner bearing out. So it has to sit all the way flush like that. Okay, and make sure obviously that it sits flush and everything. Make sure that the lip around here is pretty much even, which it is. And yeah, there you go. You got one new bearing. Bam. So unfortunately I have to use both hands, and I don't have a tripod for my phone. So I'm trying to describe it to you as best as I can. Oh, and I put a little bit of moly grease on here and on the new bearing, like there. Very little, not a lot, just very little. And I cleaned it with some, in this case I had the electric cleaner because I ran out of parts cleaner, but it'll do the trick. Just make sure it's nice and clean. As you see, there are no scratches or marks or scuff marks, anything from the removal. So go ahead and do on the other one. The bearing there, so I'm going to try to show you while it's being pushed down. The camera's going to move a little bit. sorry, it's just trying to. There. Just a little bit one for snug, and that's about it. Brand new bearing pushed in. As you see, the same thing on this side. Everything's even, which is what you're looking for. Right there, on the lip and top lip. That's the most important thing. Okay. So yeah, there you go. Now you're done. Now it's basically reverse order of installation. These are the new bearings and the old ones. As you see, the old ones have let me see if I can focus it, a bunch of metal and grime and dirt in there, so I'm guessing at some point the seal failed. And from what I see right here, that's the grease. You see all the metal particles in there, so yeah, they're bad. And same thing with this one, you see the metal particles in there. So the bearing is not per se busted, so it's not like it was vibrating a lot, but that noise is horrible. So, and eventually this would have gone, so I'd rather do it now than before, than after, and then it could screw up the diff or anything like that. So right now I'm gonna go back and reinstall these and basically start from, well, basically all it is mount these back up, put the axles in, put the axle bolts in, put the brake calipers on, and tighten everything up to torque, which I'm going to show you now. So let's get to it. Now the new one's mounted. You see that I have the bolts in already. They're not tight, they're just in there. See that? That's how it's supposed to sound. No noise. Okay. So, and if you notice, there's absolutely no play, so everything is perfectly aligned. Ready? Same thing on the other side. So now, I'm gonna come in here and show you how much the torque you have to apply. Sorry, I still have a mess here from the press. So, hold on, let me see if I can. There it goes. It's basically 56 to 69 foot-pounds. Okay, you notice foot-pounds, okay, so you need to get a torque wrench for this. The nut for the axle is 152 to 202 pounds, and you need to use a new cotter pin for this. Okay, so I have a bunch, so I'm gonna see if I should have one that's the same girth. So yeah, start doing that. And now for the axle bolts, right here, it's 47 to 58 pounds. Okay, I usually what I'll do is I'll split the difference and I'll get in between that. Okay, so I'm gonna start taking out the torque wrench and doing all that. But again, these are pages RAX6 all the way to RAX11. Pardon me, I'm kind of tired and it's hot as shit out right now, so I'm a little bit dehydrated. So let's get to this. I already torqued the bearings to spec, which from the last video you saw where it is. I can't remember the number right now, but anyway, now we're gonna apply grease on this. As you see, Nissan's supposed to put grease on this so you don't get the classic ticking axle syndrome. And I didn't have it, but this didn't have any grease, so I'm gonna go ahead and add some molylithium grease on here. Not a lot, just here in the back, about right there, something like that. Just add it back here on both axles before you put them in, and don't put any here. You don't need it. And if you want, you can add a little bit here, but again, it's not really needed. So I'm probably gonna grease up this a little bit and then add the majority of it down here. All right, so I'm gonna go ahead and do that and then pop this axle back in. All right, so I already went ahead and mounted both of the discs. These can be a little bit pain in the ass, especially if you by mistake move the e-brake. I just started, I didn't have the manual here, so I just tried to align it as best as I could. and I slipped them both back on. But just so you know, be very careful when you remove these. Don't move the inner emergency brake assembly, because it gets very bitchy, let's just say. Let me see if the camera can, because it's really bright out here. Alright, so right now I'm going to do the brakes. I got my new Hawk pads here. They're significantly thicker than the ones I had. The ones I had were still not bad, but I decided to swap them anyway. So for that, basically, just I still have the brackets separated. So right now, what I'm gonna do is just use a C clamp. This is a 4-inch C clamp, and then just slowly just push in the cylinder, just very slowly. It'll go in. See, it's going. It's working itself back in. Just do that on both ends. It'll go in just very gently. This is also a good moment to see if by any chance you need to rebuild these things. Mine's fine, mine's not leaking, so but yeah, just make sure it sits flush, and then once it sits flush, just take it out and put your new pads in. Alright, so I only got a couple things left. I got those 2 panels to put, the tires, the new brakes are installed. Sorry I couldn't film much. It was it's really hot, so I gotta get this done before work. So I got the spacers mounted. I gotta torque them. Make sure you torque these 2 bolts, the ones on the bottom, the bolts on the axle, make sure those were torqued, which they were. Make sure that the bolts at the end of the axle, the 6 bolts, were torqued. Make sure that the control arm bolts are torqued also. That's about, oh, and yeah, put a new cotter pin and make sure this is torqued. It says in between 180 and 200 pounds, so I put it at about 190. So yeah, and what I usually do also is that after about maybe 50 miles of driving, I lift up the car again and I recheck the torque on every bolt, just to make sure. So yeah, there are the new brake pads, the Hawk ones. So right now I have the e-brake on, so this thing's locked up tight, which you have to do in order to tighten this. So again, my suggestion is that if you ever think about tackling this, have a torque gun over there. Well, can't see it because it's too bright, but anyway, have a torque gun, either pneumatic or electric, with enough torque. That's a Milwaukee, I don't know what model, but it's a pretty good one. It snapped this guy right off without a problem, and same thing with the axle bolts and the bearing and everything. It just knocked it right out. So yeah, just put the wheels on and take it for a spin. I'm gonna take a video when after I shower, because I'm nasty right now. But yeah, go take a drive and enjoy your new wheel bearings. See you next time.